Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Site Club and from the Tom Numbers Show. And we've got a special festive Christmas show. We've got Rachel, WriteSide Blonde, and we've got 107 here in the virtual house. And Juan's got some good stuff for us. I've got a question, I wanted to just ask this straight off the bat. So I did a show with Rachel.
Oh, hold on. I gotta get my brain. Let me massage my brain a little bit to get ready here. I wasn't expecting questions right off the bat. Okay, it's ready.
You get ready.
Yeah.
You get ready. So we usually start with a question because I get the question.
All right.
You know. And so anyway, yesterday I did a show with Janine and Kathy and Rachel. And Rachel brought something up that was interesting during the show, and then it looked like on alternate news outlets there seems to be thinking of it, and I haven't checked the main news today if it's gone through. I haven't heard about it. So they're saying that Elon's going to step down as CEO, and interestingly enough, he got a 57% poll. So 57 plus the word percent, 81, comes to 138, which is Donald Trump, comes to Elon Musk Bank, comes to Bluebird Motel from Back to the Future, and it comes to I Am Twitter. The rumor is, or one of the rumors, is that Don Jr. will take over and be CEO. There's some numbers around that are interesting. So Donald J. Trump Jr. comes to 176, which comes to Back to the Future. And there seems to be a lot of correlation with the Bluebird Motel, with Twitter, with President Trump, with Elon, with they're all in the Back to the Future film. And we also saw optics of Jared Kushner with Elon Musk at the World Cup final. So are we going to see Don Jr. in charge? President Trump also said last week, just after he announced the NFTs, the Trump cards, he did a video about freedom of speech. And he said, we need to reclaim. And he said, reclaim is a very important word. And reclaim comes to 61, which comes to casino. Makes me think of the kind of trading with the cards, the NFT cards. But also 61 is miracle. And 61 is also Don Jr., as in Don Jr. So I'm wondering, is that something we can look forward to?
Well, anytime you look at a number, you should also verify that the flip side isn't the actual meaning. So when I hear 57, I think 43. What's 43? 43 is the number of DC, fourth letter of the alphabet, D, C. And a lot of times that is used as a code. And you just have to understand, and I say this over and over, but I want people to understand, I don't personally live my life worried about the numbers. But this cult that is running DC, the devil himself, think of it the way that the devil sees it. God does everything with a plan. There is nothing that God in heaven does that is not organized, orchestrated with a plan, anticipating, knowing the past from the future, remembering the future the way we remember the past. So the devil tries to mimic that. He tries to do magic to make it look like he's manipulating the future, controlling events just as God does, and making his plans. The scripture for us is we make our plans, but then we commit them to God, because he's the one that makes the plans, come to fruition, pulls it all together. So we can make plans, and we should. We should try to live a structured, organized life as much as possible, knowing, though, that we hand them over to God himself, and God blesses them and makes them fruitful and makes it work. If you had a farmer that just goes and throws seed on the ground, he's not going to grow very much. So he has to have a plan. He's got to break up the ground in the spring. He's got to get it aerated. He's got to make sure it's fertilized. He's fertilizing the year before. He's fertilizing in the winter. He's, getting the water planned and directed so that as the need for the water comes on later in the summer, he's got it available. So there's all sorts of planning that goes into a good harvest, a good crop. And you do that on the numbers. There's precision to everything that God does in all of his creation. The devil wants to mimic that, and he wants to make it look like he is operating with some type of pre-planning, precision, coordination within his realm of influence. So he assigns, works with numbers that are assigned to things, tries to mimic God and having, God on the numbers, 5 is the number of grace. 5 is the number of death and defense inside the cult that is running DC, that is running much of the world. And so the Pentagon has 5 sides. Every one of these numbers has a God side and a Luciferian satanic side. With that in mind, I watch the numbers. They also like the reversals, the flips, the mirrors. So when you say 57, because I'm pretty practiced at this, I pretty instantly go to, are they actually giving me the hidden side? The side for the public is 57, the hidden side, it's 43. It's a DC thing. And what are they doing in DC? And by the way, you're talking media, you're talking all the revelations that have happened over at Twitter in the last few weeks. Let's look at what Congress is doing right now. They're going to pass this omnibus budget. And in the omnibus budget, which really hasn't been discussed much in the rest of the world, there is a budget for, I think it's $1.9 billion or something like that, which would be another interesting number, 19, the power number, just for media, a media center in DC with statues and memorials for all the great journalists in America. And then who would pick those journalists? Which society, which group gets anointed to decide who the journalists are we want to, commemorate? I can guarantee it won't include somebody like a Breitbart. Okay, it'll include some of the anointed masters, the most trusted man in television, most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite. Why? Because he was one of the accolades of the cult that's running DC. And he was a one worlder. He was all about the New World Order. And he was also about the Luciferian agenda behind the scenes at the UN and everywhere else. Another Rockefeller guy. So when you know that they're creating a memorial to honor their team, their players, their people at National Public Radio that are pushing their agenda from a globalist perspective. And they're using your money as an American citizen to pay for their bullshit. Okay. Look at where your money was going. Tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars to control how you think and what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say, not just at Twitter. If I was looking at Elon, one of the most important things isn't even what he showed in the numbers, in the communications, in the control at Twitter. Twitter is just one facet of the media complex, which Eisenhower warned about. Beware of the military-industrial complex. That industrial side and that military side, they were mating. And what came out of that union is this social media militarized complex. So that remember, Facebook wasn't invented by Zuckerberg. It was invented by DARPA. It was called LifeLock. It was given to Zuckerberg, who's one of the anointed insiders from his bloodline, and then promoted. So when he used some of the money that he got from Facebook, that was your money that created Facebook. That was American taxpayer money that created Facebook, the rope that you are supposed to hang yourself by. And that's who controlled much of this last election in 2020 was Facebook, throwing $500 million plus control of the conversations inside Facebook. It's not just the money that Facebook threw at the drop boxes and machines that were given at strategic locations to control the vote. It's also the money that Facebook got. Facebook got paid. They got paid to control what you couldn't say. They had minders. The FBI paid them money. FBI paid Twitter money to control what the public said. Where'd the money come from? Who's paying that money to control you? Okay, and then they're going to make a memorial for the people that are this insider club. You know, that's like Capone making a memorial, a statue, and putting it in the middle of downtown Chicago in the city square in front of the courthouse. Okay, that's the kind of bullshit that you're doing with your tax money. And then they do it on the numbers. They do it on the numbers in the way that they put it, so that they can show you right in your face that it's them doing it. And they're laughing about it because they believe they get power, energy, and further control, just like the Pentagon. 5 sides. Who runs this operation? Who's in charge of this operation? They want it right in your face. Every symbol, every street angle, the angles of the streets have significance in the numbers, in the way that they're projected to you, and the symbology, whose cult they're promoting. Go look at any overhead of Washington, D.C., and you'll see that. And then, by the way, the symbols that go with numbers, so the 17th letter of the alphabet is stamped right around the grave of their greatest coup victory that they ever got. John F. Kennedy's grave is stamped with a great big Q in concrete surrounding the whole thing. And then what do they put? They put a big fuck you right in the middle of it. The eternal flame. What is the Statue of Liberty? ISIS holding the eternal flame, or an upside down penis ripped out by the roots, which is the core of their, the symbology is more important to them than the cross is to Christians, because their symbology is the penis of Osiris, the center of Washington, D.C., the monument. That's what it is. But in the center of the memorial to President Kennedy, they put an eternal flame. And it's technically supposed to be the upside down penis ripped out by the roots of Osiris. That's the flames. That's what's there in the hand of the Statue of Liberty. That's what the symbol is at the center of the federal city. That's what they just laugh about. And all this media coverage coming out now showing that this cult was able to manage things with the help of a vice president to murder a president, with the help of a cult to make sure that nobody could get to the truth of it through all of these years. And then further, that they can build out the institutions and the memorials. What do you think those memorials to the media people are going to present to the world as who gets to be honored and known for what they did? It's going to be a bunch of bullshit. And theater, it's front and center in DC today. Look at the theater that's going on with Zelensky coming in to speak to America about the crisis that the Ukraine is under. The Nazis in the Ukraine are being attacked by Putin. What are we going to do, America? We have to get over our angst with the Nazis from World War II. We need to support our Nazi brothers and sisters as they fight the evil Putin and all those God-fearing Russians, because that God that they serve, those Orthodox Russian ministers and people that go to church in Russia, we've got to come against them and help our Nazi brethren. And by the way, So now on this special day, what is the religion of the Nazis?
Do you know, Rach?
I don't know. I was going to say
Oh
Jesuit.
my gosh, you guys!
I don't know.
My gosh, geez.
I don't want to be wrong.
Shit, oh Frankenbeer, give me strength. Holy flaming cow farts! I can't believe it.
I don't want to be wrong
Okay.
with one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I wonder how many of the listeners out in this audience know what the religion of the Nazis is, which we celebrate at this time of the year. How many people don't know this? This is critical information. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. Okay. All right. I wrote an article years ago, The King of Misrule and His Misruling Princes. So I think I'm going to read it later on today with the girls over at Hammer Time. So if you got audience wants to go over and take a look at that, but let's talk about this for a few minutes and we'll do the setup for when I read it later today here. Did you know, obviously not, that the religion of the Nazis was Saturnalia and that the Nazis were Saturnists? What is a Saturnist? What is Saturnalia? Saturnalia was also the religion of Rome. And so when you see these eagles portrayed all around Germany, it's the same eagles, which are actually a phoenix all over Germany. What's the phoenix? They're close in appearance to an eagle with just a couple little feathers hidden in certain places. And the reason the phoenix is such an important bird in their symbology is because you're actually looking at the same families, the same people, the same bloodline, the same religion, over and over and over, reinventing itself. They keep reinventing themselves, going down in flames, and then out of the ashes of Rome, out of the ashes of Germany, of whatever empire is going on in the world this next time around, it's the devil killing the devil and then reinventing himself and coming out. Different names, different faces. You know, one era it's a Rockefeller, the next era it's a Clinton. One era it's a Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. The next era it's a Windsor. Okay? They changed their names. You know, Zuckerberg, where'd that come from? What family is that? And then the wealth, because he just came up with all the genius of Facebook on his own. And now he's a multi-gazillionaire. Oh, but his wife, she's worth even more. Do you know Zuckerberg's wife is worth more than he is? Oh my gosh. The same families right there in plain sight, running your life. But they're all Saturnists. What is a Saturnist? In the article, I talk about the king of misrule. And what is that? At this time of year, coming up on the winter solstice, which is tonight, between December 21st and December 22nd, is the longest night of the year. It's the shortest day of the year on either side. And when you follow the sun's track, it goes way down on the horizon, lower and lower and lower. And then at the winter solstice, the lowest point, it appears to observers to hover in this certain zone. And then it starts its trek back up to the north. And so that's where we're in the dead of winter. It's the coldest here in North America. And then it starts to warm back up again. And that period of time when it's hovering down there, depending on whose book you're looking at, how they talk about it, you know, it's a few days, 3 days at some technical level that it appears to just hover. But for some groups, it's 6, 8, 9, depending on how you want to count it. It just appears to hang very low, and then come back up north and again get the longer days, the warmth. You still have a long winter ahead of you, but and of course this is counted as the beginning of winter until we reach the spring equinox, when the sun is halfway between the southern point and the north. And of course, in South America, south of the equator, Africa, it's summertime right now. So they're out having a blast. When I was in July, I had friends that were down in Argentina skiing, and they just let me know yesterday that they were leaving tonight on their private jet. They're going down to Argentina, and they're going to go hang out on the beach at one of the resorts because it's too cold here in North America. So,
and here,
yeah, they bounce back and forth to keep things going. So, what is a Saturnalia festival? What is a Saturnist? In Rome, Saturn was considered by many to be the most powerful of all the gods. And Saturn, of course, we think of the planet with the rings and the mystery. And I will tell you that in the other physics, where rotation is so critical, and then leverage by distance, relative size isn't as important as momentum. And there's an equation that covers that. And so the interesting thing about Saturn is that there is, from the physics side, because the rings.
Sorry, Juan. Juan. You said sun. Did you say sun eyes? I didn't hear the word. You said that's more important than momentum. What was that word?
Well, the size.
Oh, size.
Size is less important. So, for example, a non-planet like Pluto, depending on whose school you're going to, way out at the edge of the solar system, because of its angular momentum, or Neptune, Uranus, because it's way out there, but it's small, but it has to travel this incredible vast distance, many, many, many times further around the sun than the Earth travels, because it's so far out there. Its relative speed, even though it's small, it has more energy within the other physics, more influence than a planet closer in, like say Mercury, which is closest to the sun, which is, somewhat similar mass-wise, and yet wouldn't have quite as much energy as something way far out distance, depending on the speed. And so think of a tether ball on a tether. And if it's way, way, way far away from the tether pole, you got to have a lot of energy to make that thing go around the pole or just fall down flat on the ground. In close, you just barely have to hit the ball at all to get it to go around the pole. And so as you get further out, it takes more energy to make that ball go all the way around the pole without gravity pulling it down to the ground. And so within the other physics and rotation, it actually has influence in a four-dimensional situation. So it's I don't want to get too lost, but the whole point is that Saturn, here's something that very few people know. In the other physics, for the people that watch this, it's believed, and when you look at it, it's believed that Saturn's rings are artificial. They didn't naturally occur. Somebody was building something there. In fact, we look at the B ring and it looks totally artificial, even structures in it. And what were they doing? Let's just do a mind game for a minute. What were they doing? They were building something of immense proportions, no doubt using machines. They didn't have construction guys out there. They had machines that were constructing this trail of a particular groups of material around the planet. If you go right up to Saturn and you look at the rings around Saturn, if you were standing there looking at them, you practically couldn't see them because the material is very, very fine, talcum powder like dust almost. But we look at it on an angle and the sun refracts off of that material. People think, well, to see it from Earth, it'd have to be like, size of buses or, trains or boats or something, huge chunks of something like we see in the asteroid belt, an exploded planet. But that's not true at all. Saturn, it's actually a very fine material. It's just the angle that we look at it. It's like when you see a rainbow. That's just water vapor up there, but you're 42 degrees angle of refraction from the light source, the sun, when you see that rainbow and it's hitting water vapor and you're seeing an arc in that zone because of your angle of refraction. It's the same thing out at Saturn. If you got right up to it, you'd be looking, where's the rings? Where's the rings? I don't see them. You only see it as you get the right angle to the sun and some distance, kind of step back and look at it. And when you're right up close to it, you don't see it because it's just too thin and you're too close. You don't get the right reflection off of it. So with that in mind, this very fine material, because it's over such a vast area, does have a lot of weight to it, but it's within a certain zone. And so understanding how the other physics work, etc., the theory is, and I agree with it, I subscribe to it. The theory is, first of all, that it was artificially being constructed into something. Second of all, it wasn't completed or was partially destroyed at some point before completed or after. And so we don't see it in its fully functional condition. And some of the other areas outside of the B ring and other locations out there are material that was further scattered from whatever destructive activity. Well, what was it intended to do? It was a weapon. It was a weapon. And it was designed to be able to transmit energy in the other spectrum outside of the 3D spectrum that we operate in normally, at great distances. It was a planet killer. It was being constructed over some vast period of time. If machines are doing it, maybe it's mere decades or hundreds of years, might have been thousands, but it was a machine that was being constructed on a planetary scale where it could direct energy in the other spectrum at far distant places that moves at speeds way beyond the speed of light. At other locations, that somebody was going to weaponize this large gas planet Saturn, use the ability for it to be a projector of that energy using those rings as a type of a focusing system, and be able to hit an enemy or something else at great distance. Now, the other alternative is it could also have been a power generator for something that somebody was doing that might be, vastly beyond our capabilities today. But when you think about it, look at how far we've come in the last 500 years as a planet. We went through an industrialization period. We went through a technology period. We're now going through this period where we're beginning to see the earliest moments of machines being able to replicate themselves down into the nanoscale and out into these huge constructs that ultimately will be quite large. As the people move out from the planet into near Earth orbit and then out across the solar system, you might say that populating the solar system might take us, just for the sake of discussion, 1,000 years. Well, since the time of the creation of Adam, 6,000 years, 1,000 years doesn't sound like very long. And technology accelerating like it is, we as a species would, the growth rate in our understanding how to do things is accelerating so much that what we can do 100 years from now compared to what we can do right now is almost incomprehensible in some categories. People talk about med beds and vehicles for space travel, or even just occupying the upper atmosphere. The technology improvements are just going at an unbelievable rate to most people right now. And then unfettered, if we don't blow ourselves to smithereens here in the next 5-10 years, and set ourselves back another 1,000 years, bombing each other back to the Stone Age, what would the next 1,000 years look like in the way that people would grow and move? If we're able to occupy our solar system in that next 1,000 years, are we able to occupy a corner of our galaxy? What about 5,000 years or 10,000 years? In the span of time, geologically, as a planet goes or something like that, these are nothing. So I come back to Saturn. Would a group, would a people, would a machine industrialized civilization, was that somebody that was 500 years ahead of where we are right now, or 1,000? In reality, I could make the case, I think, pretty well with the Azimuthal curve, that we would look at that being something around 500 years is all it would take. And we could be building machines that could be building the rings around Saturn on a massive scale in order to use the other physics to project things either for good or for bad, focusing energy at distant places at greater than speed of light. So with that in mind, who did it? Many people look at where we're at right now and say, well, we're living in a debris field, a junkyard from some type of intergalactic, interplanetary war civilization. Was it confined here to the solar system that we live in between the various planets, or was it our planetary system versus another one in some distant place? Now, I know for a lot of the people, they're losing it because it's like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with politics here right now and presidents and cults. And I would tell you that that's not true. The people that we're in this great contest with right now believe that they are the descendants of a group of spacefaring peoples who, like the movie Planet of the Apes, fell to Earth and then had to get by their starship, their spaceship, their machines were broken to a point where they were stuck here, prison planet, trying to build their way back out. That's why all their symbology over and over and over again talks about how they fell to Earth, and their leader fell to Earth, leaders, and they have to rebuild the technology to be able to get back out. And I can show it to you in culture after culture after culture, the leaders, the bloodlines, and they see us like in the movie Planet of the Apes, not where the humans fell to a planet that was inhabited by apes. They consider themselves the higher being beings, and they fell to an earth occupied by apes, and they have to make do with us. They're not merely human, they're more than human, and that's what they're dealing with. And so within that cult, that Luciferian cult, going all the way back to the Sumerian period, to the Babylonian period, to the Egyptian period, the Canaanites, and the challenges with Israel, and all the way to this moment in history, they repeatedly rebuild, reinvent themselves, time out, burn up the image that you saw of them before in a great fire, in a great pyre, if you will, funeral pyre. And then out of the ashes, miraculously, the new leaders of their families emerge, like a Zuckerberg, like a Clinton. You don't have the same names. They don't have the same weight. They don't have all the history. New and improved, 99 and 44, 100% pure. But their religion is the religion of Saturn and Saturnalia. And this moment, this season of the year is their most magical time of the year, because they believe in this death and rebirth cycle, that this darkest moment, that their God is in this darkest moment and then being rebirthed, reemerging, coming back north again from its southerly retreat and bringing life and health and vibrancy to the whole world, and then preparing them for what they want, which is liftoff to go back to wherever they came from. And they're also doing all of their acts to be seen by the gods whom they revere as their brothers, their cousins, their cohorts, who may not be able to see them here, but if they do the right demonstrations, do the right stuff, they'll be seen and caught back up, raised up, and brought back into their heavenly habitations from which they fell. And that's why, for example, at Mount Hermon, the highest location of a World Heritage Site on planet Earth is at Mount Hermon. And that's where they have this little kind of a tiny cathedral worship center at the top. And then at the bottom is where the city of Baal is located. It's been destroyed. Earlier cultures figured out how horrible they were. But the gate, the archway to the city of Baal, that's what's been reproduced and sent out around the world, where they do all of their magic acts, etc. And that is where the children, the humans, must be brought to be sacrificed, which is talked about in the Bible and many other places, to sacrifice the human children so that they can make room for theirs. It's a Luciferian religion. That's their belief. And this Saturn festival is their high holy festival that was celebrated all through Rome at the winter solstice, which we now call Christmas, which has nothing to do with the birth of Christ, nothing to do with true religion in the Old Testament. Of course, for Christians, that was when the Festival of Lights, Hanukkah, was celebrated. And what was that really? I told your audiences, Christ was born on 9/11, 3 BC. What's 9 months plus prior to 9/11? Hanukkah. And that is the conception of Christ. But it's twisted around in the way they do things. They've got you doing their celebration at their time of the year in plain sight, adding power to their rituals, when in reality, you think it's all about Christmas and Santa. Even Santa itself is a inversion of the letters. You're celebrating Satan. That's horrible. I know people climb out of their chairs. They're done with it. They don't want to hear this stuff. Okay, well, you don't want to hear it. I'm just telling you the facts of life. These are magicians, and they like to fool you into participating in their magic. Did you know that the Pilgrims, when they came to America, would have nothing to do with a Christmas tree because it was a pagan festival in the Old Testament? God said, do not place a tree in your residence with ornaments. Why? Because that was the sign, that was the celebration that went back to these pagan rituals related to the Saturnists, related to Babylon and all of these other gods. So the worship of these other gods. So, you know, that you don't know it is really Fifth Avenue advertising in the modern era. 150 years ago, Americans with any kind of a church history background would be so offended that you had a tree with ornaments in your house, because that would indicate that you were into the pagan religions of which our ancestors left Europe to get away from. But now, if you don't have one in your church, then you must not be, you're not in the spirit of the season. And it doesn't matter that Christ wasn't born this time of year, and that it's clear from the scriptures he wasn't born this time of year, because it's the greater meaning. We don't know what time of year he was born, so we do it just to celebrate the idea, the concept. Well, okay, you're being fooled, and you're going along with it. It's the way it is. Go ahead, see how God feels about it. I don't think he's as excited about it as most people are, but anyway. Am I clicking with you? Are you kind of rolling with me on this? You getting it?
Yes.
So then let me talk about this article I wrote a few years ago. I think it's been about a decade ago. In the Saturnalia festival in Rome, at the time that Christ was here, in Rome, the way that it was celebrated, they would have kind of a party, a celebration, and it had gone on for 100, 150 years, even before Christ arrived on the scene, and it continued long after. What was interesting was that as it was a very popular winter festival, and the reason it was so popular was just plain so fun. What happened was you would have a cake, there's a big party, and initially it was pretty close to the dead of winter, this longest night of the year. I mean, you think about it, the crops are in, you've finished preparing storing up the stuff for winter. People are inside more, it's a little cooler as you get into some of the northern countries and closer to Italy and Rome itself. You had, it was still pleasant. It was comfortable. It wasn't so hot that you couldn't function like it has at times during the summertime. So it was just a pleasant time of the year. And they'd have a party. And at that party, there would be a big cake. It could be done other ways, but it was preferred to be done with a cake, kind of a pleasantry. And in the midst of the party, everybody would ceremoniously get a piece of the cake. And then as you were eating your cake, having your cake and eating it too, as you were eating your cake, there would be a bean, a golden bean, somewhere in that cake when it was all mixed up and it was poured out and cooked and baked. And somewhere in there, there'd be a golden bean. And if you had the piece of cake with the golden bean hidden in it, then you got to be the king of misrule. Now, this was for anybody in the house. It could be for the owner of the house, or it could be any of the slaves, because they had slaves in Rome. It could be for one of the sons or daughters. But surprisingly enough, the magicians, they always kind of knew who was going to get the bean. or what group was going to get it, because part of the magic was it's this cake. We don't know where the bean is at. We don't know where it ended up. But in reality, they kind of know exactly where the bean is. They don't want it to go to just anybody. And the fun part was that whoever gets the bean, they get to be king of misrule. So they would be clothed in finery. They'd get some jewelry. They'd get a crown, and it'd usually be a slave. And
Well,
then
I'm
the
sorry.
slave,
I think Rachel's got to go. She's got to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna say bye quick. I'll watch later and I'll catch up.
okay, you've got get a paper on it because there's going to be a test later. I want to make sure you didn't miss anything. Okay.
I'll watch
All
later
right.
instead.
Right as we get to the good part, you're leaving. I can't believe it. Oh my gosh. I was just getting rolling too, man. God.
Send me the test later. I'll study.
All right. All right.
All right. Bye.
I'll speak to
See
you
you
after,
later.
Ray. Cheers.
All right. Bye.
And
Thanks
now
for
we
the
can
text,
talk
Mark.
about Rachel. The rest of the stuff I wanted to tell you what we were thinking about her. Okay. And we'll know everything now.
She was in red. She was. I
Yeah.
teased her before. I said she looked like she was dressed in like a Christmas. I said Christmas tree, but that's not really correct. More like a Santa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ruining her whole Christmas because she's probably just going to get a Christmas tree and presents just now. That's why she's running off. She didn't want to hear what I was about to say.
She'll get over it. I'm sure.
All right. So whoever gets the bean, they get to be the king of misrule. And misrule, what's that about misrule? It's an inversion of everything that's productive. You're at the middle of the winter. Everything is thrown off. It's a non-productive season. And so a slave would rule over the wealthy and decide what was good and right and what wasn't. So a slave would misrule. He would order, that different people have orgies. He would order that there could be rape and it's legal. He could order that, bizarre things that make no sense. And they would oftentimes go into the public square, the public buildings, and pretend to be the tax collector or property manager, different things like that. And they would govern the kingdom in bizarre ways, order bizarre taxes, order that everybody has to drink and get drunk. And these are the things that Cicero in Rome complained about. The country became so chaotic and the foolishness was so great and the damage to the buildings, to the function of the country was so great. It would take weeks or months just to get the country back on track again from this misruling festival. And then even more heinous things such as murder were allowed during this time. Why? Because this was considered the moment when the slave who could become the misruler could order that someone be put to death, someone who was an enemy, somebody that they didn't like, that had treated them wrong. So the fear the rest of the year was, what if the person that you're dealing with, who's a slave today, gets to be the king of misrule for 3, 4, 5 days, and then wants to come for vengeance against you? And it's totally legal. Murder is legal. All sorts of bizarre, literally ordering orgies or drunkenness. People in the outlying communities would literally hide out and avoid the cities during the misrule festival because it was so scary. And if you fell under, somebody's gaze that was the misruler, or had the misruler's ear. Because remember, if it was your friend who became the misruler and you wanted revenge, you wanted something somebody else had, you could whisper in the misruler's ear and he would give you your every wish because he's your friend. He could order something that would help you. But here's the catch. At the end of the season of misrule, which started out to be just 3 days and later became a week and at some point became, a month or more, it became more and more disruptive, and Rome became less and less profitable. It couldn't get about the business of Rome and the rebuilding, the putting things back together again, because it became so chaotic, was so long that it was destructive to the whole operation of Rome. That's why it was ordered that the misruling festival be limited in time to a very short space of time later on. And you have to think about the world we're in right now. Does some of the stuff I'm describing to you sound like the world that we're living in right now? Are there misrulers somehow being put in place, not just in America, but around the world, to get us off track? I'll use Zelensky. Zelensky is speaking to Congress today, a joint session here in America. And in this joint session, you have a person who was a comedian who was pushing the whole cross-dressing thing. And by the way, I'll just put a little something in there for those people who, in order to get into positions of power here in America, especially in a particular Western state, and made deals with the devil, deals with the cartels, in order to get the money, in order to get the influence, to get the assistance, to get into high office, even while engaged in very bizarre acts. Think that those videos will stay exactly where they're supposed to stay. They're already loose. They're already loose. And there's nothing you can do about it. Watch what happens. It'll be like General Patton with his tanks. You'll hear a little something about Patton here shortly. And that's just the first salvo. We're coming. You wanna be a misruler? You want to participate in the festival? You want to do what you want to do? We're going to do what we're going to do. Watch what happens next. So with that in mind, in the season of misrule, as it reached its climax, its height, which was in this game 3 days after the midwinter solstice, the halfway point where the sun starts to return north. In earlier years, it was ended on the 22nd. Later years, the festivals extended out to the 23rd and even to the night of the 24th and to the 25th, depending on where in time and space around Rome you were located within the broader kingdom and some of the outlying areas. And so the culmination of the season of misrule, the misruling festival, was that the king of misrule would return to the temple of Saturn, which was the most important temple in Rome. Why was that? Do you know that the temple of Saturn in Rome was also the mint where the money was made? Think about this moment in the world history. Who's really running the planet? The banks, the bankers, the money changers. That's who's running the planet. Where did they go, these emissaries of the man whose name we won't even say, the players from the FBI that were controlling everything that you could say and communicate about. Where did those players go to get the dossier against Trump? They went to the city of London, the city within the city, the banker's city, the one place on planet Earth where Queen Elizabeth and her mother before her had to go, take their shoes off, present themselves to the mayor, the lowly mayor, the mere mayor of the city of London, and curtsy and bow, kiss the hand. The Queen had to kiss the hand, had to, curtsy to the mayor of the city of London. Yes, because that's the true power behind the throne. This is very important. The symbology, the imagery on the planet, the money changers, those that are running how the commerce happens, who gets to live and who gets to die, who gets the money, which business, what way, what's the interest rate, because the money is the choke point for the energy passing all around the world. With that in mind,
Temple of Saturn is 185, which is the city of London.
There you go.
185, yeah. And energy is
very
London.
important. Yeah. So now, and that's a very good correlation too, by the way. So now, think about this. The Temple of Saturn, which is also the mint to make the money. Remember, Christ, when he was challenged on, do you pay taxes? And Christ had a coin brought to him, and he said, whose image is on the coin? And they said, Caesar's. And he said, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, give unto God that which is God's. Okay. So, in their world, that coin, that money, that coin of the realm, that dictated the area that Rome ruled, where its money had to be exchanged with its image on it. Even today, look at the imagery on any currency out of any of the global Federal Reserve banks, starting with the US dollar. What do you see all over it? It's covered in all sorts of occult imagery. You can go online and look at all the stuff that describes what's there and what the meaning is and all that. Supposedly there for security purposes, against counterfeiting, etc. But there's some very, very bizarre imagery, occult imagery. Why? Because it's a talisman. It's in your pocket. You're carrying around the instruments that project their power across the world to transact any goods, to denominate your life energy. You go out and you spend a day doing something productive, and then you get paid in coin of the realm with their imagery on it. You've exchanged your life for a talisman of wealth that they control, they own, they create. You've done an exchange of your life for their piece of paper. It's actually quite disturbing. If you get too far into it, you can lose your way, but we have to function in the world the way it is right now. It doesn't have to stay that way forever. So at the end of the winter solstice, at the end of the Saturnalia festival, the king of misrule would come to the Temple of Saturn with his whole band of people who had been ruling with him, benefiting because he was in power, or any of those that were in tow because they were enslaved to it. It was quite a grotesque, drunken orgy festival. Very dangerous if you were on the outs with those people that happened to be around the king of misrule and who's on the inside. You dare not speak something that might catch his attention, and then in a drunken rage, you do something that turns on you. It's kind of like what's going on right now. You can't talk within the media. You have to be careful what you say around some of the people because everybody's afraid. You know, I had somebody, we're sending letters to the Supreme Court, and you had people, oh, they're tracking you. They're tracking you. They're going to go after you. They want to know who the conservatives are. All right. Yeah, whatever. So the long and short of it, people live in fear. Okay, because I send a letter to the Supreme Court, I got to be in fear because they're going to track me, hunt me down, do something. Okay, so with that in mind, this band, this marauding band, this drunken band of people all show up at the Temple of Saturn, and the Temple of Saturn has these steps that go up to a plateau in the upper portion. Kind of it's a big sacrificial area. It's a altar area, and in this upper portion on this pyramid-like structure, the king of Misrule would present himself at the altar to Saturn, and all around the Temple of Saturn, and even there in this altar area, all 42 gods of the Greek Parthenon, which is an interesting number also, 42 degrees angle offset from the light source is what you have to have in order to see the rainbow. So 42 is this division of the light that allows you to break it down to its various components. These gods of the Greek Parthenon really are all just variations of Satan, Lucifer, the devil himself. The devil has 1,000 faces, 1,000 names he goes by. But in the Roman thing, they had these 42 gods that they worshipped. All of those gods are present at the temple, just like they were in New York on 9/11. If you look out at the statuary, if you look out at the buildings, the symbology, all 42 gods of the Greek Parthenon were present during the birth process of this entity or entities coming in to the world during this birth cycle at the 9/11 scenario in New York. In the heavens above, Virgo was birthing during those exact hours when the buildings came down and were hit and then came down, or blown up and then came down. So there's a lot of symbology here that's huge, planetary in scale, that the cult is managing. But there in Rome, the king of Misrule would present himself at the altar, and then by his own hand would put himself to death, cut his throat. If he was unable to, usually for drunkenness, for being drugged out, being barely conscious, because again, the king of Misrule knew the entire time, from the moment that he got the bean, from that moment on, his days were numbered. And he knew exactly how many days it was until the sacrifice at the Temple of Saturn. And the misruling season would come to an end with his death. So the king of Misrule knew, why was he being so drunk? Why was he ordering other people to do bizarre, evil things? Because it was his chance for revenge. It was his chance for pleasure. It was his last moments in this world. And he knew that his time, his days were numbered. And so everybody all year long, all their life long, might fantasize what they would do if they got the golden bean with the last moments in this world. How would they function? What would they do? Where would they go? Who would they order to do different things? Who would have their ear and who wouldn't? who would they get revenge on? Knowing that the end was their death. And then it was encouraged to be done at their own hand. If they weren't able to, someone would help them. Other times it was by hanging and choking out. Different times of the festival, different eras, the death was done differently. Others, it was in a funeral pyre, a great flames. But always the king of misrule was put to death. And then at the conclusion of the death ritual festival, everybody would stop their drinking, remove themselves from the temple of Saturn, take a couple days to sober up, and then start to put things back together again, mend the relationships, fix what had been destroyed, broken, rebuild, just like the phoenix rising out of the ashes, because it's really a phoenix festival as much as anything, and continue with society, knowing that the following year, the whole process would be repeated. When you look out at what's happening here in America and across the world, a very strong argument can be made that you're watching a variation of the misruling festival of Rome, the bizarreness, the incoherency of much of the decisions coming out of the capitals around the country and around the world. And the question is, and even who the leaders are that are being put in charge of these whole places. You know, one of the saints of the Orthodox Church is Darius. And Darius was a soldier in the Roman army in the northern regions. And when the Misrule Festival came around, within the group of soldiers that he was with, he drew the beam, because there would be lots of Misrule festivals around the country. It wasn't just one location. It would be cities and families, and everybody got to do it. And so, but the great one was in Rome, and that was the one with the Temple of Saturn, and then it was mimicked around the country. Darius, knowing that it would be his death at the end, when he drew the beam, and he was a Christian. By the way, Darius is the name of the son of Esther from the Bible, from her relationship with King Xerxes, and her son was named Darius, and he was the one of his progeny was the one that allowed the Jews to return to Israel and to begin rebuilding the city with Nehemiah and others. Darius was a name that was very popular because he had done such amazing things during his reign. And so Darius was a soldier in the Roman period, a couple hundred years after Christ, and he refused to misrule. He wouldn't order the debauchery. He wouldn't order the madness amongst the other soldiers. And so the commander became so incensed. And remember, oftentimes the piece of the cake with the golden bean in it was known very well by the magicians cooking the cake. It was a setup to get rid of somebody. They could do something they wanted to do, but you know, at the end, they would be their life would be gone. So there was always the magician behind the scenes trying to orchestrate who was going to get the bean and what they were going to do when they got it. Darius got it, and he refused to misrule. And he said that he did not want his last moments in this world to be soiled with the debauchery, the drunkenness, the wickedness that was required of a misruler. So he wouldn't participate in their festival. He wouldn't soil his soul with what they wanted him to do. And ultimately, the commander had him killed because he wouldn't misrule, and another one was picked. In this moment in time, there's so much madness going on in the country and out across the world, and people wanting us to get into a war with Russia that will kill potentially millions, lead the world into some type of chaos that's hard to imagine. Even the insanity of what's going on, where arguably a fifth of the world's grain supply is going to be wiped out, the ability to grow it in Ukraine, and will cause a catastrophic daisy chain effect out to food supplies across the rest of the world. That is what is in the offing. If we continue this war madness in the Ukraine, trying to get America to burn down the sporting goods store, crimes took place that the mob was milking all the money through, okay? Because that's what's really going on. Western leaders were using the Ukraine, its government, its businesses, to do money laundering for all of their financial crimes. They need all of those leaders. They need that region destroyed so you don't have any evidence of what's been going on. The other side of the coin is, at the end of this misruling festival, Russia's still in a very precarious situation. The West continues to be a danger and threatening. So Russia's big power militarily, its forte, I should say, is a winter war. And that's where they defeated the Nazis previously in World War II. This group out of the Ukraine is pretty good. They've maneuvered a number of times with the Western assistance to keep Russia in check, but Russia's been playing with soft gloves all the way along, trying to get the West to, come to some kind of logic and to back off. It's not happening. I believe Russia, Putin, the only option that they really have left at this point in time is to get very hard-nosed. And of course, Putin speaking in America, that's an anticipation of that, to get us amped up, to get us ready to go to war. And so what Putin's going to have to do is he's going to have to do a winter offensive and bring in more of his military. He's only brought in a tiny percentage thus far, and march across the Ukraine, push the Nazis, the Azov army, the Zelensky crew back to the borders. And of course, this is going to have problems out into neighboring countries, Belarus, Poland, etc. It's going to be very traumatic. It's like the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the question is, as they push back hard, will somebody decide to use a tactical nuke? Will Russia respond in kind? Will Russia be satisfied with just keeping it close in and regional, knowing where the real threat is coming from further to the west? Will Russia decide at some point that the only alternative for them is a much broader attack, reaching out across the globe and using other nuclear weapons? That's something we should be very cognizant of here today. Will the misruling crowd today in power across the world get us into a situation where even as the festival ends, the music stops, and they disappear from this world to the next? We're left with the consequences and the cleanup that doesn't come easy and could lead to some more catastrophic, grave situation. That's the question we have. That's what we need to be aware of. That's the moment we're in. And this is the season. This is the dates. Even bringing Zelensky to America at the height of the misruling festival to proclaim what we're supposed to do is like the misruling king and all of his princes making insane decrees that we're left with the consequences of. We need to think again, wake up, refuse as Darius did to participate in their occult religious practices, and then decide that we're also not going to allow ourselves to be sacrificed because of it. Take control of America and the rest of the world by God's hand, by God's strength, and save the world from this insanity with these misrulers, these Saturnists who are operating right there in plain sight to destroy the world.
It's interesting.
It's a hard one. I know you got to really absorb that. It takes a while. There's no simple answers here, but this is a very important conversation, and it's actually quite serious. It's not just a story time. This is the world that we're in. This is how they think. This is a religion to them.
Talking of Merry Christmas, Merry is 79, which is Ukraine. So it's interesting that lines up. And going back to the opening, I asked about Don Jr. You said about God's plan. You talked about 43 as well. So because 57%, but 57, the reverse is 43 if you do it, based on 100. 43 is plan, but God's plan. God's is 45. That's spade, as in the top card, the top trump card in the deck of cards, if you call it that, if you could call it that way. But that's 88 trump to God's plan. The Anointed is 115. Twitter. Monument is 115. Memorial, you mentioned a couple of times, 8619. Talked about that power number. And then you talked about the media complex, and then you said about the military complex, but the media complex. So media complex is 88 Trump, and media is 32. Media complex, that's 120. On the bad side, that's Tavistock, but on the good side, it's the truth. So Trump media, maybe we're going to see more of that through the events of Twitter and other things. But it's also Trump again. So again is media. Complex is 88. So again, Trump or Trump again. A memorial. You talked about a memorial, but a memorial is 87. Justice Truth Jr. And the Osiris Penis. If I spelled Osiris right, Osiris. Is that correct? I think
yes.
so. That's 89, which is virus. So it's interesting that we've had the last few years to do with that. But it goes back to Osiris. Argentina is actually 87. 89, I should say, virus again. But the Osiris penis is 63. The Osiris penis is 185, which is the city of London, which is a temple of Saturn. Eternal flame on the good side is 112, which is a victory. And you described perfectly the imagery of Star Wars. You're talking about the rings of Saturn and the B ring. You were saying that was a weapon. Weapon is 74, nuclear 74, energy 74, gematria 74, tarot 74, London 74, English 74, Messiah 74, Muhammad 74, Jesus 74, DeLorean for the time machine 74. But you were describing perfectly, in many ways, Star Wars and the Death Star. Star Wars is 119, redemption. It's also Nikola Tesla. We were talking about the other physics. But when they do the Death Star explosion in the very first Star Wars movie, it's a ring goes upwards when the Death Star itself gets destroyed. Or is it when they destroyed Aldebaran as well? One of them, if not both, it's It's a vertical ring, but it always made me kind of think of Saturn at the time because of that imagery, but you described that. And Planet of the Apes, I'll have to look at that. You talked about the Great Fire as well. So fire is 38, which is gold, which is balance. But great is 51, Jasara, 317, so 17, 17, 17, so it times it by 3 to maximize the power. That's 51, that's Batman as well. But Great Fire is 89, Virus again. So that made me think of the Great Fire of London. And there seems like there's been these great fire events, and we went through one, and we're still going through it, but the events of 2020, because Great Fire is 89 again, Virus. Death Star is 96, which is spaceship, which is February. The Death Star weapon, 203, artificial intelligence. Fooled is 57. So we've got the percentage on Twitter, but you've also got 57, Magician. On the good side, you've also got Tesla, 57, England, 57. In the Dead of Winter, 180, 180. Hopefully we'll see a 180 during this period of in the Dead of Winter. Slave is 59. I don't think I might have done it ages ago, but I didn't recall it. That's Joker. Slaves is 78. Kennedy, the slaves no more. So the flip on that, we're going to get Justice, because Justice is 87. We've done the Temple of Saturn, which is 185. The Mint again is 89. Virus, Argentina, Virus. Great Fire, 89. But Mint is also 56, which is light. So the light also is 89. So again, on the flip side, we've had this period of a virus, but we're going through. It's also been a period of light. The light, 89. Light is 56. Paid in Coin of the Realm. Coin of the Realm is actually 144. Digital Soldiers, you got the 144,000. The Temple of Saturn's 218, which is John F. Kennedy Jr. 42 was interesting. So 42 degrees. So 42, you were saying that about, I think don't know if you were saying it was in the other physics, but it's the angle of the light that you need for the rainbow. But 42 comes to 140.
Angle of refraction.
Yeah, the angle of refraction. So 142 comes to I am Nikola Tesla, which is interesting. And degrees is 63 again. Think of JFK with the year of 63. It happened on a Friday, which is 63. Friday, 63, it's 126. A superhero, 107, John Connor, Sarah Connor. But 63 is also, like you said, about the penis for Osiris. 42 degrees comes to 205. It's a personal marker from my grandmother on that. But then there's some features in the Batman film where Madison Square Garden is the focal point for the last scene of the film, and that's 205 as well, next to the Tesla Hotel, the New Yorker in Manhattan. You talked about he drew the bean, so the fall of Misrule, basically. He drew the bean as 118, which is the storm, the awakening, the matrix. Darius is 72, which is first, which is money. The golden bean plus Darius is 184. He said that he wouldn't take it, he wouldn't partake of it. 184 is the fifth dimension. One golden bean. He didn't actually say that, but if you change it to one golden bean, that's the 185 again. On a positive, sorry, one golden bean plus Darius. On the positive side is 185 Donald John Trump. And a winter war is 132, which is JFK, JR is alive. 132 is Princess Diana. And Merry Christmas is 189. That actually comes to a date, comes to my birthday, February 15th. So I don't know how long winter will last and what dates we're on, I don't know. But anyway, so there was some thoughts and some numbers that came up but I was grateful for the communication that came through during the show. That's a great jacket there, though, Juan. How can people get them?
Go over to thejennifermack.com, and you got to put the in there. Thejennifermack.com. She's got quite a bit of stuff over there. It's really just a spectacular jacket. The prints are just amazing. Love them. And of course, with what's coming, we're right on the cusp. You know, the arrest of Trump and a victory that's hard to even contemplate right now. We're right on the edge of it. Enjoy the show. I think it'll be something that people will remember out into time in an amazing way. So we're on the edge of something amazing.
Fantastic. I'll put the links below. And talking of this, so when I've seen this imagery, I'm thinking President Trump, going back to the Trump cards that he released last week, the NFTs RV, NFTs Joker. We talked about the cards, Trump cards, Joker card could be anything. But President Trump said it's the first series. Oh, nice, bring the pain. So, and pain is RV. And he said that it's the first series of Trump card NFTs. So I'd assume there's going to be a second series. And I'm wondering if we might see the Matador as a part of the series. I think there's a chance.
Well, it'd be smart to do that. Yeah. In fact, look at the even the back of the jacket. The back of the jacket's awesome.
Yeah, but that would be cool. That'd be a cool NFT. I'm hoping as well we might see some Back to the Future stuff. Maybe Trump with an almanac or something like that. Because they showed back. So I was talking to Matt Letitia. We did a show a few days ago, and I told him about the Bluebird Motel, the scene in Back to the Future. And when I talked about the flux capacitor, and he brought up a song by a band called Busted, and also McFly. So the guy from McFly joined the band Busted, and obviously there's Marty McFly. And I talked about flux capacitor. And sometimes I'll say some numbers and I'll get some correlations, but then sometimes there's one that comes in and it's not totally connected, but the value's there, but it feels appropriate to mention. So sometimes I'll mention some just at the end of the bunch I've said. And I felt I should say 182, the flux capacitor. And I didn't know that Matt knew about that because he hadn't seen the Back to the Future film. But he said, I know the group Busted, 182. Well, he said the flux capacitor, they talk about it. So he quoted the lyrics of the song, and I didn't know that. I was new to that. And then we realized that Busted, the guy from Busted, used to be in the band McFly. There's George McFly, Marty McFly. But then on the Monday of this week, Back to the Future's on. And I'm thinking, I should call Matt up and tell him it's on. Lo and behold, I get a pocket dial from Matt. Well, I get a miss. He's calling Tom, somebody else he knows, a relative, I think. And he called me. And he's like, oh, sorry, Matt, I got the wrong Tom. I said, Matt, Back to the Future's on. He said, I know, I saw it. I saw the part when it mentioned the flux capacitor. And I was like, there you go, we're all on time. So all these wonderful synchronicities and things coming to the fore. But there was something I was going to say about the NFTs. Yeah. So you even mentioned in your phraseology, you said a non such and such, but it made me think of anon, but then if you do non-fungible token, that's 184 again. But if you do a non-fungible token, that's 185. That's Donald John Trump. And so I was wondering, I'm thinking perhaps the great man has been, well, he's released his own NFT, so maybe he was part of the design of that, or heavily involved at some point. But a non-fungible token is 185 Donald John Trump on the positive side of things. So,
well, let me just add one other thing.
What's that? Say again.
Well, if you want to talk to Back to the Future, as my friend Richard Hoagland says, going where someone has gone before. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita out of India, which of course is what Oppenheimer quoted when he said, I am made like God, a destroyer of worlds. Well, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, the god Vishnu had a flying vehicle, and it could destroy whole cities. And there's even intricate descriptions of that vehicle and how it worked in the writings. Amazing, amazing. Why did Oppenheimer quote the Bhagavad Gita? Because someone had an understanding of the physics before. We were just repeating what somebody had done previously. Did life on this planet begin with Adam, or was that a invention of life? Even in the Genesis, in the beginning, the world was void and without form. The terms are like a field that's plowed. You have two creations: creation of everything, and then the creation of which Adam presided over, and a field plowed, ready to be planted. Some prior generations that, it says of Satan, he was a destroyer from the beginning. Is there, we look at the demons and other life forms out there. Where did they come from? What's going on? Were they from outside of the Earth system and then found their way here somehow? It's a very large universe, very large galaxy full of lots and lots of stars and planetary systems. It's an even larger universe with galaxies, enough galaxies that appears to be more than just the stars, even our own Milky Way galaxy. It's something very vast. God's a lot bigger, perhaps, than most people have considered. And as Sir Isaac Asimov, who was an incredible biblical scholar, did amazing biblical research, may have been one of the best ever, if not the best ever. But he was also this science fiction writer who understood there was another aspect to what was going on here that most couldn't really envision. The only way he could convey it was through the science fiction stories that he wrote. If you go back and even read the book of Enoch, it appears pretty bizarre to most people within a churched setting. So at the end of the day, hearing about Enoch and his travels out beyond the planet, out into the solar system, where he saw the Titans, great giants. By the way, where were the Titans from? Saturn. Okay. So there's a lot of imagery in here that we may have more understanding through some of these colorful stories and tales and history than we might at first realize. There's more depth here than people at first blush will accept. And then within these cults, they have certain belief systems that they're acting on. Whether you believe any of that science fiction, any of that prehistory, is sort of irrelevant. You are living through extrapolations of it, because this cult that has a death grip on America and the world, they believe it. And because they believe that this is how they got here, and they believe that they're doing these certain rituals to be able to build back out, to go back home, to do whatever they want to do, you're living through their nightmare and exposed to what they believe they can and should or entitled to do in order to get where they want to go to. And if you don't get a grip on that and then get control from these people, they're actually maniacs. They're insane. The misrule season is exactly what we're living through. They will take us to some catastrophic end of their creation, and it won't be pleasant. And that's even what will be proposed ultimately by extrapolation with what Zelensky is going to propose and want America to participate in moving forward in engaging Russia to stop Russia's advance on the rest of Europe, which is really just help us burn down the sporting goods stores so we can destroy all of the records of the mischief that the Western leaders and this Nazi clan have been engaged in for many years, using America as a tool. Can you imagine all of the people across Europe, all of our soldiers here in America who fought to defeat Nazism, how they look and feel and think, to see a person representing the Nazi army speaking before Congress in America at the height of the misruling festival and what they'll propose? It's insane. Wake up.
Wake up. I think the misrules.
So that's my big presentation for the misruling
For
festival.
Christmas.
Hey, go enjoy your Christmas now, because it is that it's their festival, and so there you go. I've got a tight schedule today, so I probably have to pop off here fairly quickly. But any other questions?
No, I think that was good. I think the misrule season, if I've done it right, just miss MIS is 203, artificial intelligence. That's it. Yeah, I think that's good. Merry Christmas to everyone. But it's
Merry misrule to everyone. Merry misrule.
yeah, very misrule.
And then may the Zelenskys of the world have beautiful, flowery words as you sail into the sunset in their chariots.
Oh, I've got an observation. I mentioned this with the show with Janine yesterday, but Elon at the World Cup was wearing a Zelensky t-shirt. He was just wearing the green kind of khaki t-shirt. I've got one like that. I haven't worn it for a while, but I was going to wear it in honor of the World Cup, but I wore a darker green one, more of a Christmas tree color. But that green khaki one that you always see Zelensky in, Elon was wearing the same t-shirt at the World Cup.
Well, again, you're in the misruling festival.
Elon Musk is Christmas 110.
You're in the misruling festival. You want to be on the good side of the king of misrule, because he can command anything, and you don't want to be on the receiving end of his madness. Yeah. So you want to be, look like a fan.
Yeah. What was the observation from your perspective with Lionel Messi lifting the World Cup for Argentina, and just before he's about to lift the golden, well, it's not a cup, but it's the World Cup, it's the statue figurine of the World Cup, he's asked to put on a robe, like a black see-through negligee robe. They said it was, it was part of the, I guess, Qatar's tradition of some kind of ritual, to accept it. But it looked like it made it publicly. It made it look like he was a wizard. It looked like he's there, Harry Potter. No one's ever done that winning the World Cup. They've never suddenly put on a black kind of dressing gown in the middle of the point where they're going to lift the cup.
Well, let me just say this. It's an interesting observation. Oftentimes, it will, part of their ritual will be stated to be one thing, but it's actually another. And so you have to let your brain separates that reality. It defies logic. And so that observation, even on your part, is interesting. They'll call it something else, but words have two meanings. Symbology has two meanings. They call the Statue of Liberty for a reason, because it has a good association. But whose liberty? It's ISIS. It's the statue of ISIS. It's always been understood to be that way. It was given by the French Freemasons to the American Freemasons, and it was a statue of ISIS. But then it's named Liberty. You have an entire event on 9/11 there in New York that is actually a great religious incantation festival act, and yet you call it something else. So terrorists, to who? So things are misnamed for a reason, and that's part of even the misruling king.
Public schools here in England. Public schools are nothing but public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've got folks I need to switch to here, and I appreciate the chance to present to your audience, Tom, and I hope that people will enjoy that and stretch their mind, think about it, and it will be interesting and helpful to them.
I think it will be. Thanks, buddy. Merry Christmas to you and Jennifer, and we'll see you soon. And
all right,
enjoy the show.
All right, thanks, folks.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, if you haven't done so, do subscribe to Tom Numbers and Site Club, both on YouTube and Telegram, and all the links will be here. And go to the links for Jennifer and Juan. Thanks, Juan. Cheers. Bye.